I got some things, man. Something I need to get off my chest. It might be a longer intro than usual, but I gotta indulge. Today is my full preview show of the Florida Tennessee matchup on Saturday night. However, I want to take a second to look back at my last episode. I feel that it can often be beneficial or at least interesting to take a look at the opposing team in depth so fans can understand what to expect when watching the contest. And given the fact this is a Florida Gators focused show, since I cover the Gators and all, I took the liberty of providing a peek behind the curtain on the Volunteers in my Wednesday episode. I thought it served as a nice baseline for how to understand what Florida matches up with, what they're kind of playing against in week 3. But it went deeper than that. It was who is Tennessee and what do they want to accomplish no matter which opponent they're facing. And I had a viewer who I truly appreciate because I see him in the comments all the time. And I'm riding with my guy Steve because Steve is riding with us. But he said it was a good show if you're a Tennessee fan, if you're looking for Tennessee content. But if you're wanting to hear about the Gators, it's not, which I can understand. Like I said, Florida Gators centered show. You expect to hear about the Florida Gators. But I truly feel like it's a great way to expand your horizon and potentially watch the game differently if you have a strong grasp of what the opposing team's trying to do to the defense or what the defense is trying to do to the offense. It's a step in taking the casual viewer into kind of giving them a true sense of knowing ball. That's what this channel is about. I'm trying to kind of express my knowledge of football that I've gained. And I'm no expert by any means, but I feel like I've studied and I take it seriously to learn football, to learn scheme, to learn opposing teams and their tendencies to give to y'all, and trying to take a step in giving casuals the ability to be true ball knowers. And I had my guy Evan Kroll from SI's Vol Country on the show, and we expounded upon everything, whether it was Joe Milton, Josh Heupel's offense, Tim Banks' defense. It was a great episode. I'll puff my chest on that one. I'll sit here and bang the drum and say that was a good one. So humor me. Go give it a look. Hear me stand in the paint on my prediction of Joe Milton causing this team to regress in the offseason because he's no bueno. Break down a misconception of the UT scheme and offense because of the pace at which they play, the pace in which they utilize offensively. And I just think there's so much more that it provides. It provides a valuable perspective of this week's game. And so if you want to get that, if you want, just a few notes to understand about Tennessee that you could possibly pull out at the function, pull out, you're hanging with your boys, you're like, all right, what do we got today? And you can come out here and give them some notes on Tennessee that they might not have known, or vice versa. If you're watching this one, get some notes on Florida. If you're a Tennessee fan, go ahead and do it. Go ahead and do it. Go check that one out. It was a great opportunity to speak with Evan, and I think it's something that everyone would really enjoy if they do. Let me know if you're enjoying what I'm putting out on this channel and if it's something I should continue. I hope to be doing more of opponent studies as the weeks go on because I think, depending on when the opponent warrants an in-depth look. I mean, I did it briefly for McNeese State in week 2. I know I'm a sicko, but people responded well, said it was a good opportunity to learn what Florida was facing, and I think it might not always be its own show like it was this week with Tennessee, but I feel it gives an opportunity to set the stage for the full preview episode like I'm giving right now. So just let me know in the comments if you think that the Gators opponent breakdown is something that I should continue, and if you're rocking with it. And I know that's a long way to say, go watch my last episode. I swear, or I promise, I don't want to promise y'all, but I give a full confidence that you will learn something and you will enjoy what we had to say in that episode. And it'll have you ready to rock for Tennessee's trip to Gainesville on Saturday night. Like I said, you might even take away a few discussion points to bring up with your friends. I hope you do. All right. Thanks for letting me get that off my chest. But now we've got to talk about the massive matchup in the Swamp. We have a SEC East battle for the last time that it's the SEC East to preview. But before I get into all that, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, all that jazz. It's going to be worth it. I'll remember the ones who were here from the beginning. If you're leaving a comment and I can see your name, I can put a face to the AV, the profile name. I'll remember you. The start of something special here at Carroll's Cadence. Trust, I'm going to remember each and every one of you. Yeah, man. A historic rivalry on Saturday night is ready to write its next chapter. Gainesville, 7 p.m. On one sideline, you have the Florida Gators. On the other, it's the Tennessee Volunteers, kicking off in just about 24 hours from the time of this posting. It doesn't get much better than that, does it? Nah. This is a contest with a prominent history. Florida's controlled the series really since the turn of the century and won 16 of the last 18 matchups against Tennessee. But last year, it really seemed like the Vols were kind of starting to gain some steam. And they won in Knoxville. And it kind of looked as if that could be a momentum-shifting moment in the yearly battle between the two programs. But there's still a large hurdle that Tennessee has to jump to capitalize on the non-fluke victory they had last year. They got to go steal one in the swamp. They got to go get one in Ben Bill Griffin Stadium. They've come close to doing it in 2015 and 2017, but we saw late game heroics in both of those games, whether it was from Will Grier to Antonio Callaway or Felipe Franks to Tyree Cleveland. It was opportunities that the Vols just, they find a way to just see victory slip out of their hands in Gainesville like none other. And then you look on the other side of the mountain, and the Gators are set on maintaining that firm grip in the series. They have home field advantage. They're hoping to upset the number 11 team in the country and give Billy Napier his first win against a rival since he arrived at Florida. That's been a talking point for Florida fans is Billy Napier hasn't beaten a rival. He's 0-5 against Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky, Florida State, and LSU. He hasn't won any of those games. This is an opportunity to do that. And there are really two things that I think will decide which team's able to be victors when that scoreboard at Florida Field hits triple zeros. Which one's going to be above? Which one's going to have that score in their favor when the game comes to an end? Two factors that ultimately make the difference in this one, and they tie into each other. And the first one's just the respective running games of each program. Both offenses want to run the football. And Florida uses it as their identity. Florida uses it as, this is what we want to do offensively. We want to be physical, hard-nosed, and impose our will on the opponent. Every single game, that's what they want to do, and that's not going to change. Tennessee, on the other hand, uses the run game as a preliminary approach to kind of set up the explosion that we've come to know of Josh Heupel's offense. He carried it from UCF to Tennessee in 2021. Took a year to get going there, but it started to click late in the year for them. And then last year with Hendon Hooker, it started firing all cylinders. They had a historic season, and it looked as if that was going to be the Tennessee we knew going forward. But as we kind of progress into this contest, we are starting to see that this one is going to come down to which team can make the most impact on the ground offensively while stopping the opposing ball carriers from finding their groove. And for Tennessee, it's about leaning on the trio of Jalen Wright, Jabari Small, and Dylan Sampson. Three very capable running backs, three talented ball carriers who have had a lot of success through the first 2 weeks of the season. And then you also have to get Joe Milton involved with his legs, because then you can work out a play action. You can have just him take a step forward before the play starts, and everyone's having to stand still because they don't know where he's going. They don't know if he's escaping the pocket right off the bat, QB draw, whatever it is. They want to force Florida to play with more men in the box than Florida wants to. They want to force Florida to have that kind of nervousness, that angst for, oh, this team can really gash us. We got to pile everyone in, and that's when they hit the deep shot over the top. That's when they go deep. That's when the explosion that they saw last year that hasn't necessarily carried to this year under Joe Milton, that's when it returns, is when Florida stacks the box, or any team they play starts stacking the box to stop a rushing attack that seems improved and more voluminous this year. They use it at a higher volume. That's when Tennessee comes out and says, yeah, don't forget, we can still hit you deep. We can still hit them home run balls, because they can. It's just not as consistent as it was last year because Joe Milton's not as consistent as Hendon Hooker was as a passer. And then defensively for Tennessee, they need to do what they're trying to force Florida to do. Stack the box. Force Graham Mertz to beat them through the air. He's shown he can be a fine field general through 2 games. There's no knock on Graham Mertz for what he's done in the first 2 contests of his Florida career. But the one time that he had to sit back and pass it 44 times, the Gators scored 11 points. It wasn't necessarily his fault, but that's not Florida's identity. That's not how they want to play football. I told you earlier, they want to play hard-nosed, they want to play physical, and they want to impose their will. They're not built to win football games when Graham Mertz is passing the ball upwards of 40 times, really upwards of 30 times. So Tennessee needs to sit back and make him throw the ball 25 to 30 times and find a way to kind of disrupt that rushing attack that that Florida wants to lean on all game, that they want to get going and rely on. And even with the Vols secondary being a major question mark that it is still at this point in the season, despite showing an improved defensive effort through 2 games, albeit against lackluster Virginia and Austin Peay team, it's important for them to kind of say, okay, we're going to throw out our secondary. Sure, it's going to be a question mark. But we trust them to be able to perform at a level that permits us to still be successful even when Florida's trying to pass the ball. Tempt Billy Napier, the offensive play caller for Florida, to turn Florida's offense into an air attack. Force them to put the ball in the air in Graham Mertz's hands and make him just throw the football around the yard. That's how you win. That's how you beat Florida. And their ability to do so largely falls on their interior defensive line. Amari Thomas is really the one that stands out to me. He doesn't show up necessarily on the stat sheet because he's that nose tackle type, but he is effective. He can command double teams, and he can open up holes for a guy like Aaron Beasley to come in and clean up. Because he comes in, cleans up a hole, the Gators are going to have a long day if he does it consistently to get that offense going and keep it and keep up with Tennessee or force them not to have those opportunities to be that explosive offense that we know that they can be. This Florida team won't function at a rate conducive for success without a strong rushing attack. They won't. It's not going to be like last year where Florida surprises everybody and they go out and, Anthony Richardson puts up a really dominant. That was his best passing game as a Gator in 2023 or 2022. Really throughout his career, but specifically last season, that was the best Florida looked through the air. And it wasn't really even close. That's not going to happen again this year. Florida has to rely on the rushing game. And even though it was the best game for Florida offensively through the year, they ended up losing still. 38-33. It shows you that's not how this team is built to win. And Tennessee knows that. Tennessee knows, Tim Banks knows, their defensive coordinator, that's not how Florida's built to win. We got to make them do it. And Tennessee has the pieces to do it. Those front 2 levels, they look vastly improved from last year. They look stout. They look dominant even. And like I said, I know it was Virginia and Austin Peay. But if we're taking things away from Florida's ugly loss to Utah and then McNeese State, you can surely take things away from Tennessee's first 2 games. It was vanilla. There were things that they didn't do against those 2 teams that they will do against Florida. And that's how you should play it. If you know you can go out there and you can be victorious without showing everything, why not do it? But there's still a portion of what they've done to say, okay, this Tennessee team can have success against this Florida offense if they play it right, if they stack that middle, if they force Florida to throw the football and disrupt any type of rushing game that they tried to throw their way. But for Florida, it's about finding that success and doing it at a high volume. This offense has an evident desire to play through its rushing game. I've kind of harped on it. I feel redundant saying it at this point. Feels like every episode I'm talking about that, but it's always going to be the case with Billy Napier calling the plays for this offense. And similarly to how the trio of ball carriers got going in week 2 against McNeese State, they'll need to do it against Tennessee early and often. Feed them early and often. There have been times where Billy Napier kind of outsmarts himself by trying to establish a passing game early. It doesn't work. Florida falls into a hole, never climb out of it. and they never climb out of it because the one thing that they are borderline elite at, or they at least were last year, is rendered basically useless at that stage because they're down a score or 2 scores. If they're down 2 scores, you're not running the football. You're trying to climb back into it. You're trying to get things going faster, and that's Tennessee's game. They have to run the football. It's like the blind side. Sandra Bullock calls up coach mid-game. Run the dang ball. You got to establish it. You got to establish it. That's what Billy Napier's doing here. Now, there are ways to supplement the running game in the collegiate game that aren't direct handoffs. And I know it's kind of, it's different at this stage than it is in the NFL or really at any stage. It looks as if it's still part of the passing game, but it's not, and it counts in the stat sheet as a passing game. But working toward the boundary and behind the line of scrimmage is just an extension of the rushing game. Having those pop passes and jet sweeps and screen passes and arrows to guys like Ricky Pearsall and Eugene Wilson, guys who really can just make plays in space, is another staple of this offense. If the running game is on top, that's the next notch down. And it'll take more of that in a productive fashion for UF to not only have success in the rushing game, because then it spreads them out wide, kind of targets the boundary. It targets the weakness that is Tennessee's secondary. But because you're getting your playmakers involved. You're getting the guys that you need to see touch the ball. Really, between Ricky Pearsall and Eugene Wilson, they should be touching the ball. If Florida runs 50 offensive plays, those two should be getting the ball at least 15 times combined. And I know it sounds ridiculous when you have, you're talking about trying to get the running game going. You want to get other players more touches. But those two, 15 to 20 times, is a perfect that is exactly what Florida needs. That's exactly what the doctor ordered for Florida's offense. If you can get the running game going, get your playmakers involved, and let Graham Mertz be a manager. And then defensively, the Gators will have to win by trying to play with a light box and going man across the board against Tennessee's wideouts. Tennessee likes to target deep. They like to run their boundary wideouts way down the field. They'll kind of then peel out at the end of the play. You'll get a substitution of wide receivers come in if the play is unsuccessful, and they just keep running it like that. Tires out defenses significantly. And while Milton might not be consistent, he's got a cannon. He can still hit that bullseye when you give him enough chances. Florida can't give him the chance. They got to play with the light box, take care of business in the middle with that 5-man interior defensive line rotation that they've been utilizing so effectively early in this season, and then allow your starting linebackers, Shamar James and Scooby Williams, to kind of play as the plugs. You get Jamari Lyons commanding a double team, you can go plug a hole for Jabari Small to kind of meet Shamar James in the hole. Leading tackler for Florida this season, going against Jalen Wright. He's a slippery, he's hard to bring down on first contact, but if you're able to do that at a consistent rate, it gives Florida a chance to be where they want to be. But you can't get sucked into the trap of helping rushes up the middle or playing with more than 6 or 7 men in the box. Because if you start crowding the box, that's when they're going to go, boop, Joe Milton's going to drop back, they're going to hit you over the top, it's over. Eventually, that strong arm of his is going to find it, and it's going to drop into the breadbasket, and they're going to be taken off. They're going to hit you when you least expect it. That's how it works with Tennessee, game in and game out. They hit you when it least expects it. And at its core, Florida wants 6 players in the box with potentially a safety dropping down into there as they go with a cover 3 type look with the 2 corners dropping back, and then you'll have guys underneath. But that's how they want to play. They operate in a base nickel coverage, which means there's 5 defensive backs on the field at one time in Austin Armstrong's system. And under the ideal scenario, you'll have the 3 down linemen, the stand-up edge rusher, and the 2 off-ball linebackers playing in the box, with the rest of them playing out in coverage man-to-man across the board. If you can stop Tennessee's rushing attack by doing that, you give yourself a chance. week in and week out, no matter the opponent, no matter who it is. If any team in the country can do that against Tennessee and have success with it, they have a chance to beat Tennessee. It's easier said than done. Don't get me wrong. But the Gators, who currently rank as the number 3 team in total defense this year, have shown that they seem to be up to the task for that feat through 2 games. They've shown to be stout against the run and even better against the pass. So if they can find that groove against the run, which they've done through 2 games so far, and eliminate the explosive passes, the play, the 70-yarders like they saw against Utah, that really just disrupted the entire contest. It didn't lose Florida the game, but it crushed any type of momentum that they had, and they never really recovered from that. If they can do that, then they're putting themselves in a position to beat Tennessee. And the run game itself, and I know it's kind of small in terms of like what the grand scheme. That brings me to my second point, which is it's a little bit bigger, and that's clock management. Like I said, both of these teams want to run the football for different reasons. The Gators' run game is their identity. That's their desired means of production. Tennessee, like I said earlier, it's a preliminary facet for success, forcing opponent teams to crowd the box before dropping back and uncorking a deep shot down the boundary into the arms of a streaking wideout that basically is going to be running 9 routes the entire game. Jalen Hyatt was fantastic at it last year. They obviously lost Cedric Tillman as well. Have started to replace those wideouts who have been a bit shaky through 2 weeks. They had a come to Jesus moment apparently in practice this week. Had to kind of figure some things out. And that was a team-wide thing, saying like, hey, we got to get focused on the Gators. We got to let this Austin Peay game kind of pass us by. But a big reason for that meeting was wide receivers not being able to hold on to the football. But it's still a concern. No matter when you're playing Tennessee, it's a concern that they can get it going quickly. And that high-octane offense we saw last year can get moving. But as a result, those styles, they're contrasting. They bump heads. They do not like each other, which makes for interesting football because one unit is trying to force the other to play at their speed. Tennessee's trying to force Florida to play fast. Florida's trying to force Tennessee to slow it down and play methodically. And if the Gators are able to operate on the ground with intention, keeping the ball away from Tennessee's offense while moving effectively into scoring territory, and it's just a steady and methodical pace, it doesn't give Tennessee's offense the ability to find that rhythm, to find that rapid pace that they can just go and score 40-plus points any game. That's winning football for Florida, specifically in this matchup. And then on the flip side, if Tennessee does find that rhythm, if it clicks to where they can play, hurry up, they can, have those opportunities to start moving the football quickly and efficiently, it can come easy to them. Last week against Austin Peay, they struggled early. They got stifled really for the entire, I think first half. It could have been the first quarter. Earlier when I was looking at the ESPN stat, the play-by-play, I think it was right at the end of the first half though. They went on an 11-play, 67-yard touchdown drive, which you think, they were, churning it out. They did it in 2 minutes and 4 seconds. If Florida allows that, if Tennessee's able to do that, it could get ugly quick. Because we all know Tennessee can score. It may not be what it was under Hendon Hooker, but it's still very much a danger. Tennessee can score in a hurry if they get to clicking, if they get to targeting the boundaries, winning through the rushing game, and then hitting those deep shots, because that's what they want to do. They can start moving those chains, reeling off big games on the ground, finding holes to exploit in the Gators' coverage. It'll be over quickly. And if this game is a blowout, if this game is lopsided in any which direction, it's because the Volunteers found a way to blow the doors off. Florida's not winning this game by running away with it, unless there is something very unforeseen that happens. Because Florida's not built to win these, high-scoring contests, or they're not built to play from behind or anything like that. They're not built to run up the score. They did it last week against McNeese State. They scored 49 points. They had 9 total drives, excluding the last one where they just kind of played to let the clock run out. They scored on the first 7. If they kept their starters in, they could have kept going, but it's still just, you saw that it was not something that they can really just get that score to just. That's not what Florida does. It's not built to contend in a high-scoring contest. It's not built to play from behind. And if they allow Tennessee, who is built to do all that, to get up 2 scores, it'll be a tough mountain to ascend on Saturday night. That's why Florida has to control the clock, limit the number of possessions Josh Heupel's unit gets, limit the amount of time that they're able to find their groove and find that just high-octane attack. Find that ability to score on an 11-play, 67-yard touchdown drive in 2 minutes and 4 seconds because they want to run a play every 20 seconds and run 75 plays per game. If they get to those, if they meet those goals and do so at an effective rate, it is not a good day for the Florida Gators or Florida Gators faithful. But I'm not necessarily saying that that's going to be the case. I look at this game and I look at what Florida wants to accomplish, and I think, sure, it's Florida's rushing game against Tennessee's rushing defense and Tennessee's rushing game versus Florida's rushing defense. But I think ultimately the latter, Tennessee's offense versus Florida's defense, is what will determine how this game goes. Because Florida's offense, sure, it's going to have its struggles at points. It's going to have its ups and downs throughout the year, not just in this game. But their ability to control the clock and the defense's ability to prove stout in the front 2 levels against Tennessee's attack kind of puts them on a notch that I think gives them the ability to win this contest. I think they show that they can stop the run with the light box, create some pressure on Milton, force him into making some rare mistakes as a passer later in the game in more crucial moments, utilize its rushing game to kind of limit the Vols' opportunity offensively, which goes back to controlling the clock. And I think they come away with a low-scoring upset victory over Tennessee, 23-20. Emotions are going to be running high. It's going to be I think it's going to be chippy in the Swamp. I think it's going to be both teams understanding what this game means. I think Florida did a lot of talk this offseason about what rivalry games are, how important they are, how historic they are. Brandon Spikes being back, as they've said, Scooby Williams said on Wednesday that he's kind of brought back some of that edge again for a team like Tennessee. And I think Florida understands that. The crowd is going to be, it's sold out, 90,000 plus. I think it gives Florida a very good opportunity to beat a team that if it was anywhere other than the Swamp, I would not be picking Florida to win this game. But I think they have what it takes. They match up well with Tennessee under ideal circumstances, under what both teams want to do. It gives the Gators the edge. And as a result, they upset Tennessee, knock off the number 11 ranked team in the country with a score of 23-20, which comes down to the wire. I think that's the way this game goes, and we will see if I'm correct. I'm 1-1 on the year with predictions, so we will see how they perform and if they're able to bounce back and potentially rid some of the bad taste in their mouth from the last time they played a Power 5 team in Utah. If they win this game, that kind of gives Florida some confidence moving forward. They have another tune-up game next week against Charlotte before having to go on the road to Kentucky, which is going to be a massive test for Florida. Because Kentucky's good. Kentucky is exactly what Florida wants to be in terms of being a hard-nosed football team, and Kroger Field has given Florida fits over the past few years. But we'll see if they're able to kind of get on track with a win against Tennessee this week and potentially start to, at least show that they're competitive in the 2023 season. But thanks for watching another episode of Carroll's Cadence. I'm Brandon Carroll, your host here at the channel. You can follow me at itsbcarroll on Twitter for live coverage of Florida and Tennessee's matchup tomorrow night. Make sure to hit that like button on this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Let me know down in the comments if you're enjoying the content that I'm producing, and if there's anything you'd want to see from me moving forward, if there's anything that you think would kind of take this channel to the next level, if there's anything that you believe is, whether it's a film breakdown, a scheme breakdown, if you want to hear about Charlotte and how former Florida quarterback Jalen Jones is doing before they come to town next week, just let me know down in the comments and we will, I will take that into consideration. But have a great weekend of watching football, and I'll see y'all on the flip side. B is out.